This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast. We have a very special episode today in the vein of our recent spate of interviews of people who have had lots of fascinating, intensive, cool roles on the television show adaptation that recently came to Disney Plus, and today's no exception. Stick around.
Woo! We left the mystery. We left it mysterious who our special guest is today. We are joined today by none other than Andrew McIlroy, acting coach of the gods, acting coach of the demigods, to be specific. You may know Andrew from being heavily featured in the documentary on Disney Plus, A Hero's Journey. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for joining us in the Zoom room today.
Well, thank you for having me into your Zoom room. Zoom room. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I only teach talking. I don't actually do it well.
Our listeners will know that whenever we were randomly talking about all the people we wanted to talk to who were involved in the TV show, we continuously cited you. Like, we have been so excited to try to get a hold of you because the kids speak so highly of you. Long before we even got to see the documentary, we knew that you played such a big role in bringing the show to life. And obviously, the people know I'm an actor, so I can't wait to talk about a bunch of nerdy, very specific acting stuff that no one else will care about. But before we get into the Percy Jackson of it all, this is the part of the podcast where we grill you about your life and your journey and everything from birth until what led you to this moment right now. Which means I'm going to do a little bit of background. You went to the National Theatre School of Canada.
I did.
You've taught at many acting schools, you've taught in university programs, you've been an actor for a long time and an acting coach for a long time as well. You worked on Percy Jackson. Your credits are numerous. I also noticed you worked on Deadpool 2, which Walker must have loved in particular. And my question was to kick us off, what drew you specifically to teaching?
Oh, what a great question. Thank you. I was really gifted with some fantastic teachers, from my, grade 8 drama teacher to my grade 12 drama teacher to my first real university, theater teachers, where I went, wow, this is it. Like, we are rolling around on the ground. We are doing dark German expressionistic things. We are crying. We are wearing leotards. Like, this is it. I'm skipping all my other classes. I'm getting leads in the school shows. Like, this is it. And I loved it, as you know, because you're also an artist. But I always loved the teachers. It's almost like I had this meta observation of what the syllabus was and the strategies for teaching and the tender care that, students, particularly actors, were dealt with. But I have to, I'm blushing. I've always taught. When my friends were working, at McDonald's and other places in high school, I was teaching disco dance.
Yes.
Yes, I was teaching disco dance and I was teaching drama. And at summer camps, I would be the drama instructor. So I've always been organizing things in my head to teach with. It's like I still, to this day, I will collect stories, I will collect interactions, and there's always been this filter, which is, how can I take this, add a metaphor, add a simile, and somehow bring it to elevate the experience of students, And so I went to Ottawa then I went to the National Theatre School, where I met my mentors, and it was just such an elevated experience, but the teaching was elevated,
Yeah.
And I fell in love. I fell in love with the program. I fell in love with acting, but I also fell in love with the communication of what it is to act. And
Yeah.
so, right, it's like, and I've always, this is going to sound really weird, but I've always felt that, listen, I love acting, but I've always felt that teaching is kind of my calling because it is the language that I am the most
Yeah.
courageous with. I'm, equally courageous when I'm directing theater, but I'm like my most courageous when I'm teaching, when I'm trying to put
Mm,
things together, when I'm trying to hold somebody uh, to a place that they said they want to go to, when I'm trying to figure out how to help an artist achieve a moment of clarity, or designing classes. Like I also have a school. I'm in the middle of a
right.
session right now. And one of the things I love to do is just to design the program. What scenes are we doing? What are the scripts we're going to do? What are the little exercises I can build around that? So it's like when I found teaching, I went, okay, this is what I do. I have this on
Yeah.
again, off again thing with acting. I've never had an on again, off again thing with teaching and coaching ever.
Mm,
It's just always been my deal. Yeah.
yeah. When it comes to teaching disco dancing, is that something you get a certificate in? Is that
No, I have to
something that
tell
you
you, no, here's what I used to do. I used to make, because there was this thing called the hustle, right? This was the 70s, right?
Mhm.
1976, 77. And I used to make up hustles on the way to Clyde. I mean, I wasn't hustling anybody, but I was going, okay, so if we do a step ball change and we do this in a four instead of a three, and then we kind of go, vertical and then horizontal. So I would like recreate these little combos, and I would go and I was teaching adults, like I'm 15, 16 years old. I'm teaching adults. And I sort of thought, and this is in Ottawa, Ontario, I thought I had a whiff of New York about me. And I would walk in and I would walk in and I would say, tonight we're going to learn the remote hustle. And I would just make these things up. And I would essentially reconfigure what we'd done last week. And they loved it, and I was like very mysterious with all these international sources. Yeah, I didn't get a certificate, but I actually gave them certificates.
There you go. They knew because they sensed that New York whiff about you. They whiffed it. There you go.
We
You go.
we actually wanted to ask you about your perspective specifically as like a, homegrown Canadian,
Yeah.
what it's been like to witness the way that acting has changed in Canada. And in particular, like nowadays, we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but Vancouver is now arguably the central hotspot of television,
Yeah.
film, everything, right? Like every town USA is Vancouver now. And like we were basically curious what it's been like to be
Well,
a
I
part of
mean,
that, to see it.
no, again, great question. I mean, I guess I moved to Vancouver in 1986 for Expo, and I
Mhm.
started to teach at a university, Simon Fraser University. I had just graduated from the National Theatre School, and now I was teaching at a university. Um, and there was MacGyver, 21 Jump Street, and I think one other show. Hardly anything was happening here.
Mhm.
We were really much service providers. The Canadian actors were service providers. Like, we were the maitre d' or the guy at the party, or woman in the lineup, all of those sort
Mhm.
of things. They were still,
Mhm.
but what we were was a cheap production center because of the
Right.
dollar, and because our rates are different. We were really favorable to American production,
Mhm.
and then our crews became you just better and better and better. And then we got some seminal shows that really showed our atmosphere and what was great about us. And it just showed off our crews, and also to showcase our talent. X-Files, really, in
Mm.
particular, that really was a changer
Mhm.
for us. And so the kind of the Vancouver talent pool, all of a sudden we were auditioning for like great parts in American shows.
Wow.
And what we had to kind of learn, because you guys have 100 years of naturalism under your belt. The Canadian film industry, I would say maybe 1972, 1973 is when it started to take off. So,
Mm.
we had to sort of learn sort of camera nuance and those sort of things. And yet our tradition had been very theatrical in a way, because it's not that we're
Mhm.
connected to England, but our references, We're very theatrical. We have the Stratford Festival, the Shaw Festival,
Yeah.
arguably some of the world's best theater festivals. So we had these incredible actors, but what we hadn't actually learned to do as a community was really sort of focus. But because I think acting for the camera is basically it's re-navigating impulses and sort of moving them in this direction. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was really sort of understanding the power of the camera and what it was to actually create character for camera, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense. And
Yeah.
so then you start to add the CW shows, right? I mean, so then we had The 100 and we had Flash and we had, we just finished with Riverdale, Supernatural, which I did a
Yes.
couple of episodes on. And you know, these were great education. Like the amount of American television production here has been incredible education for the Canadian actor. Not that we needed to
Mhm.
learn anything. We're really good, but it was just how do you speak that particular
Yeah.
problem solving strategy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And then we've got Hallmark. Like last year, we did something like 110, 115 either Hallmark sanctioned or actual Hallmark movies up here. Like we have a gazebo that shows up that shows up in so many Hallmark movies. And we've all done
Uh-huh.
Hallmark, like we've all done Hallmark movies. So I think our resume on average, the starting up Canadian actor, our resume is sometimes a little longer than the average Americans because
Yeah.
we do have access, and our casting directors fight for us, man. They fight for us. Like there's
Yeah.
like 7 or 8 casting directors in town. They've grown us all up since we were like in
Yeah.
our early 20s. And so
Mhm.
you really kind of get that feeling, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the Vancouver version of the New York actor Law and Order SVU credit is a Hallmark movie.
Yes, 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 absolutely. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow, that's so
Yeah,
interesting
so
also because
that's
now it's like moving out of the, 42 episode seasons of the CW shows and into the more
yeah,
like 10 episode Percy Jackson streamer hits, which I don't know if
yeah.
you feel that you coach differently for those kinds of
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
projects,
And
but
we've been,
yeah.
listen, our collective technical staff up here, our crews, wardrobe and everything, like we've been really cutting our teeth on big features. That's the
Yeah.
other thing about Vancouver. Like we're just wrapping Tron right now.
Mm.
We had Deadpool
Mhm.
2, Tomorrowland, like a number of really big features. So
Mhm.
everybody's been given the opportunity to get a lot better at what they do. And it's no longer just that we're affordable. It's now we're actually, a sought over talent
Yeah.
pool. And, you know, I coached Christmas Chronicles, so that we started to get these great Netflix movies as well,
Mhm.
and these
Mm-hmm.
great sort of limited episode series. And I think we handled it really well. I mean, there's been a real upset in the calendar because, everybody would go to work sort of in May and then everybody would sort of have a hiatus in March or whatever with these long things. It's the same way the pilot season has essentially disappeared.
Right.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
you've noticed that.
Oh, I've
With
noticed.
streamers, of course you haven't. With streamers, the proliferation of streaming platforms and the amount of work that was coming up here, it just helped everybody up here like learn, get better and better and better and better and better. It's like I
Yeah.
say to an actor sometimes, listen, one day on set is like 40 hours of class.
Absolutely.
Just bec absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Wow. So you don't exclusively work with kids, but you do work with kids a lot.
It's really funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, people say, people will say, my daughter has an audition. Do you want to coach her for it?" And I'll go, "Well, how old is she?" She's a child. I say, I don't actually teach children. I don't, I don't run children's classes. I just teach
Mhm.
adults. Um,
Yeah.
and I get hired on movies to work with adults, but also with kids. And I
Yeah.
think it's because I don't know if it's because I think the results are good, but also I don't know if it's because I treat kids like kids, but or kids like adults. It's just I I don't have a kid's business. So it's very funny that working with all these
Right.
kids, which is fantastic. I'm not sure I'd be as good if I was spending all of my time working with kids and I had to go and work with kids, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes sense because I mean, from talking to a lot of people, particularly, I keep thinking of the stunt guys, because the stunt guys are really some of the people we've talked to who are very like Vancouver based, and they're very steeped in the Vancouver film culture, and they always
We
talked
have the
about
best,
treating.
our stunt guys, yeah, our stunt guys, non-pariah, I have to say, like amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and they talk about treating the kids like acknowledging that they're kids and making things fun and engaging for them, but also like treating them like adults. Like, there's no talking down to anyone here. Like, we treat you like an
Yeah,
artist, and because they show up like that, which
yeah,
is incredible.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
so not from not being well, of course now you're gonna
Yes.
have this reputation for being like the incredible child whisperer, especially after Percy Jackson. But what do you remember when you like specifically what the process was of getting brought on to Percy Jackson? Did you know anything
Yeah.
about the books prior?
Well, I had actually read the books a long time ago to my godson.
Wow.
Wow.
So I knew about the books, and my dad had read me Greek myth.
Hmm.
A lot of those things came together. I had had students that had been in the movies because the movies were shot here.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we learned from
Right.
the stunt guys.
So that's really funny. So that was strange. And then Chris Columbus, who had directed one of the movies, I'd
Hmm.
worked as I'd worked with him on Christmas Chronicles because he hired me as his coach to coach the kids on Christmas Chronicles. And so there's all sorts of kind of threads. I didn't
Mhm.
know. I got a call, I guess the January. We started to shoot in the June. So that was that 2022. Help me out here. Is that 2020, 2022, right? 2022, I think.
Shooting.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we
Right.
just
I have no
dropped
idea.
last
Oh
2022.
yeah, I think that sounds right. Yeah, because it was about
Yeah.
9 months of shooting.
So I got a call from it was 185 days, I could tell you. I got a call from Dan Schatz, and he
Mm.
said, "Listen, we're looking for a coach." I also had a great friend in John Catron who had been on Tomorrowland years before when I'd worked with Rafi Cassidy and helped her develop the part of Athena. She's this kind of AI robot, and we got to work with Clooney and everybody, and it was fantastic. And John had brought my name to the attention of uh, Dan Schatz, and Dan Schatz, who I'm sure you've interviewed. Dan got in touch with me and said, "Hey, we're looking for a coach. We've got to have interviews. You come really highly recommended, and we'd like to have a chat." So I had this chat with Dan, and we talked about it. And I'd done my due diligence. I had reread two of the books. I think no, there wasn't a pilot. There wasn't a pilot script circulating, but there was some info I had managed to get from somebody I know with Disney or
Uh-huh.
something like that. So I'd done my due diligence, and our conversation was fantastic. He said, "Well, how do you work?" Because that's the thing, they don't know, and I work in a very specific way. I
Mm.
work with images, and I work with poetry, and I'm all about the kids having an agency. And it's really important that the production I'm on acknowledges that, because
Yeah.
I've been the sort of coach, or how do I say this? Some coaches are used as band-aid coaches. It's like,
Mm.
hey, make the kid cry, or hey, make the
Mm-hmm.
adult cry, or what is she doing? That doesn't sound good. You know what I mean? And go in and fix that. And I don't like it. I've been on
Hmm.
shows where they brought me in after it started shooting, and often with adults, and the adult kind of looks at you and goes, okay, I'm doing something wrong, to which I always say, no, no, we're just looking for some clarity, and I
Mm.
managed to win the actor over to my side because I work very hard to speak the actor's language.
Yes.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
I tell production that there will be conversations between myself and the actor the production won't hear, and that I'm not
Hmm.
writing memos, especially with the adult actors. I'm not writing memos sort of about this conversation I had with the actor about a particular problem they might have. I'm sort of tattling, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I've kind of got this thing, you know what I mean? This philosophy, you got to keep people safe. So Dan and I had this talk, and I said, listen, Dan, I hate kid acting. That sound of memorization, that sort
Yeah.
of, there's no ownership. That it's clear there's not hasn't things haven't been developed. I said, I'm really interested, but I like to have a month, if possible, a couple of weeks of rehearsal. I create a
Yeah.
workroom where we have all these images. It's really important that the kids have agency. And he went, okay, yeah, yeah, right. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. And then I took out this big binder of images from Deadpool.
Yes. The binders.
Yeah, yeah, the binders, but things that I had used to help Julian, who played Fire Fist, put his character together. And I have to tell you, some of those images are like burnt flesh and burning curtains and really dark stuff. And I'm trying to explain it, and Dan goes, "Yeah, I think I get it. I think I sort of get how you work." He wasn't being coy or anything. He was going great, and it was a great conversation. These people are very busy, so you don't have them
Right.
for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And they don't really sign off with any high five or anything. They just go,
Yeah.
thank you very much. You'll be hearing from us. A month
Uh-huh.
goes by, nothing. And then I got the call.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the call, and it was, and Dan and I had this conversation, and I met with the producers. Uh, I didn't meet Rick until a month and a half before we went to camera because I had to go out to the studio. And we had philosophical conversations, and it was
Mm.
basically about and Dan's thing was don't hurt our kids. And
Mhm.
I understood what that meant. He didn't say that, but I
Yeah.
went, yeah, absolutely. My job is to help you find you and sort of get out of the mix, because you
Yeah.
never want an actor in the middle of a shot to kind of go, oh, Andrew. And it's like, no. And you never want an actor to sort of think that they only are because of their coach, because
Mhm.
where's the
Mm.
fun in that? I mean, it's also
Yeah.
important to me that these kids have a good career. So what's so exciting about working with them is I get to come in at the beginning of their fame, which has turned into their fame, and sort of help develop strategies and work ethic and ownership
Yeah.
that is going to
Mhm.
grow
Mhm.
with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I know I kind of went all over the place there, but I hope that
No,
kind of
yes.
addressed some of what you were looking for.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. There's so many
I do
follow-up
go
questions
on.
that we
At
have
any at
about
any
this.
at any time you can just go,
You really hit
No.
on like so many things that we want to ask you about.
I think the first
oh,
thing and the thing
cool.
that we've been most like, I think, wow, like this goes back to the first time we talked to one of the actors. Like, it must have been Charlie.
It was Charlie.
Immediately, like early in the conversation, referenced the binders, and this whole time we've just been stewing, talking, and
I want
wondering
the binders.
Okay.
what is in the binders.
Okay. Okay. Well, so I decided, do I have, you know what? I might have a binder for you, but hold on. I decided that everybody needed an onboarding binder. And in
Mhm.
that binder, first of all, because it's so important that actors make their notes. And you
Mhm.
have to say, make your notes. And I wanted them to have something. I have my four questions I want every actor to ask for every scene. Illustrations of the spine. Like I will ask an actor where certain feelings sit in their vertebra.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, the spine chart. And what music. It's important that they build themselves a soundtrack, that there's kind of like a score. And then
Yes.
just good old dogmatic research. And
Mhm.
I'll just kind of put these in their binders. And I made individual binders so that every binder had their name on it. I didn't know how old the kids. I mean, I knew how old the kids were, but I hadn't really met them. So I went out and bought a bunch of stickers too, because I thought, because I'd worked
Oh.
with like younger kids. I got out and worked with younger kids, and I thought, well, maybe they're sticker people. And I think they were very polite to me. Leah was very polite to me. She put a lot of stickers on her binder. The boys were a
Oh.
little, they kind of got it. They kind of got into it, but you just kind of go, okay, what's gonna. But I also had notebooks made because I really wanted them to make notes. I really wanted them to get in the habit of like listening to what was going on, making notes, keeping a diary. And a diary was really important, kind of like notes from Camp Half-Blood. I sort of wanted them
Mm.
Yeah.
to sort of mirror that.
Yeah.
And then a lot of stuff about the Greeks, and each individual actor, I sort of did their provenance. So who their god, mother, or father was, and all of those sort of things, so that it really was like a research thing with a work component as well. And then binders of images. So just binders of images. So, and I
Yeah.
would put these images up on the wall, but it was like, you want any picture of Cersei, you want classical references, contemporary references, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I'm putting it together for this next season, and it's going to be more epic
Oh my
because I'm
God.
very competitive. I'm very competitive with myself. Our walls are going to be covered
That's amazing.
because
Wow.
I don't like them to say a word they don't know the meaning of, and I don't
Yeah.
like there to be a reference that goes unturned, because I think
Yeah.
the camera weirdly notices every word that you don't understand.
Oh
So if you
yeah.
just go, well, blah, 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 Medusa, like if you haven't sort of anchored it in your body, I think the camera kind of goes, oh, well, oh, it's a weird thing. And
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
so during that month of rehearsal, and I made flashcards, like killer flashcards,
Oh
like
yeah.
where they would have to ask each other these questions, right?
I was
That
literally
were,
going to ask you if you ever quizzed them. That was one of my questions.
oh, listen, by day three, it's like, we did physical stuff, we did team building, but you've got to remember, it's like we were just coming out of COVID. And
Mm, mhm.
one of the things I really wanted to do was I had a field trip planned for each of the elements. We were going to spend some time doing something in the air, something near water, something near earth, something near somewhere else. But we weren't actually allowed to take the actors off campus, so to speak. Campus was the
Oh.
studio. So I
Yeah.
had to redesign team building strategies, and they hadn't met, right? That's the other thing. So here's what I
Yeah.
have. We
Yeah.
have a month, stunts included, wardrobe, everybody. We have a month to make these actors feel comfortable enough with each other that they look like the character's been alive for that long.
Mm.
You've got
Right.
Grover and Percy have to look like they've been best friends. We shot that scene at the museum day one, which
Yeah.
is they've already been best friends for a year. So it's it's spectacular. You see how excited I get. It's spectacular to
Yeah.
figure out how do we fill it in, and then keep it
Mhm.
natural. And the binders were, I remember Clarice joined us a little bit later, and I said, "We've got a binder for you," and people would go, "Oh, I get a binder." It's like
Yes.
everybody gets a binder. Everybody gets a binder.
I would be so you're literally inspiring me right now to do I never thought about images. Like I've never
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
in all my BFA years, no one has ever said like Pinterest board your character. And
No,
that
but
is really
exactly.
yeah, because then you have the images in your mind when you're I don't know, staring into the camera lens or wherever, and you're trying to
Well, absolutely. And it's like I like to say it's lives, not lines. So
Yeah.
if you translate your character into a series of images, you're already creating a
Mm, mm.
somatic thing for it, because as
right.
human beings, we're somatic experiences. And
Mhm.
as actors, we sometimes go, you put it in your head, but you go, no, as people who live a life, you've got to put it in your body.
Mhm,
Images,
Yeah.
fine,
mhm.
try it. I mean, I think you'll love it,
Yeah.
because and then take a key line of dialogue and write it underneath a key image. And what you'll find is it actually just moves into your body.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
literally gonna do this tonight. I'm gonna do this tonight.
My
Burning
adults love it
curtains
because
and
in class, no, it's great because in class right now I'm doing that with the adults, and they always go, "Wow, this is fantastic." So you're translating your script, the
Mhm.
dogmatic work of memorization and analyzing, into a series of images, which actually does a lot of that stuff for you. It's quite fantastic, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, also like, the volume is great, and I know they did so much work on the volume. But if you're in like a blue screen and you're trying to
Yeah,
create this real life for yourself, then
yeah,
having those images, it must make it so much more helpful as well when you
yeah,
don't have the set
yeah,
surrounding you. Uh huh. Oh my God, I'm
yeah,
so excited,
totally.
so thrilled to hear about the binders. You said you had a workroom, so was there like a physical, like dedicated, like classroom space that
Room.
you had?
Yeah, well, there was this wing of the studio, and there were four classrooms for the tutors. Yeah, I guess there were four classrooms. Like each one of the kids had their own kind of classroom. So Arian had one, Walker had one, Leah had one, and then there was sort of one for the teachers to hang out in. Like they're great on-set tutors who are
Uh huh.
also, you know, I just want to digress for a second. It's on the very last day of shooting. I remember walking over to Dan Schatz, and I think you guys will really appreciate this because you really understand what it is to do a good show. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a play or something. And I had realized during the course of this 185 days that we were like a company, like really
Mhm.
Yeah.
like a company, and it was really like there was such a continuum. Even though our directors came and went, they would come back. Um, but I certainly tried to offer as much continuum as I could. And the very last day of shooting, looking at Dan shots and saying, this was like a play. This was like going
Yeah.
to rehearsal, and it
Yeah.
feels like this is the last day of the show, not the last day of a shoot. Because
Mhm.
Yeah.
sometimes, you get that thing on set sometimes where it's like, oh, okay, see you. But this, and you've got Virginia, who's got deep theater chops, and all of our guest stars have a huge theater
Mm.
resume
Yeah.
as
Mhm.
well. So
Uh-huh.
everybody really wanted to create an ensemble. And there are these rooms. And then I had this big room, and I got some mats brought in, and there were all sorts of mirrors and a couple of tables and these walls. And that's when I had a whole other bunch of images and little sayings and some of my little maxims and things to remember. And
Mm-hmm.
I had a wall of furies, and I had all sorts of really horrible, horrible and fabulous images up on the walls. And then we had this great floor. So we would go over every script. We would go over every script, and we would work on scenes at our table. Sometimes I would just say to the actors, I'd just go, okay, well, I think you guys have some schooling to do. When you finish school, I'll meet you at the table. And they knew that we'd
Mm-hmm.
be working on a couple of scenes, with pencils in
Right.
hand. And
Nice.
yeah, like really, like I just sort of, I remember looking at them at one point, they were kind of looking at me going, what is he talking about? I said, guys, it'll make sense to you, but I'm starting in like we've been working together for 5 years. And then
Right.
I think that's a good way because we're really busy. And they had incredible things that every week there was some new monster, some incredible fight scene,
Yeah.
some deeply profound, heartfelt things, and really long passages of text. Like these actors have to
Yeah.
speak for long passages. So I would know what we were doing in 2 weeks, and we'd already be thawing that out. And then I knew what we'd be doing tomorrow, so we'd be getting that ready. And I
Right.
knew what we'd be doing
Uh-huh.
in 3 weeks. So I call it moving pots on the stove. So I'm always moving the pots around on the
Yeah.
stove for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we had this great
Yeah.
room. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was kind of the learning
Uh-huh.
hub. Yeah.
I'm really curious about how close you work kind of with the director of each episode, because when you're looking at a script as the actor, you might have your interpretation of what's going on. As the acting coach, you might have your interpretation of what's going on, and then the director may have something specific that they want to be shining through.
Absolutely.
So how do you prepare? Yeah, like are you talking about like exactly what like agreed upon is the subtext, or are you like preparing them to be able to, I don't know, flip on a dime if the director's like, can we try it this way? Like,
It's a great question.
mhm.
That's the treachery. That's where coaches lose their heads
Oh
because
yeah.
the coach is not the director. And
Right.
so what I've
Mm-hmm.
learned to do, I mean, I've learned to have sort of I'm waving in front of it. I've learned to have deep conversations with the directors. I watch them work. I sit in on all the production meetings. I go to the
Mhm.
tone meetings. So I know what
Wow.
they're looking for.
Hmm.
I'm really involved that way. And so when I'm sitting down with the actors, I trust, and they trust because they've hired me, that I understand the basics and more than the basic humanities that are on the page and what the dilemmas are. I
Mm,
don't think I've ever given an actor a line reading in their life like that.
Hmm.
I don't give them line readings.
yeah.
I just we just talk about the scene. Sometimes one of the things we do, did they talk about the balls? Did they ever talk to you about the balls? I do this thing with rubber balls where they
Uh-huh.
learn their lines and then we just throw the ball back and forth so that
Yeah.
they just get the rhythm of the
Yeah.
scene. So they get the push and the
Mm-hmm.
pull. Sometimes they just throw the balls
We used
very
to do that
hard
with
at me.
socks in college for some reason.
Yes, but it's so good to liberate the lines, right? Um,
Yeah.
and as the show went on, I got to know the directors and I'm really respectful of the directors, but I'm also really like hands-on with the kids that I
Hmm.
hold them into the zone. So they're ready to take anything the director has to give them.
Hmm.
And I hold them in that zone. It's sort of like I'm, uh, you know, director of focus in a way. I'm sort of like holding the kids' focus and I
Uh-huh.
can translate for the director because I've really got the kids' ears what what we're looking for. But you've got to be very careful not to let your ego get involved. It's not even ego; these are brilliant directors. But I'm not directing,
Yeah.
so I've loved figuring that out about the job as well because you've got to go. What is like? Here's my four questions. My four questions are: number
Hmm.
one, what happens in the scene? Number two, what is the scene about? Number
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
three, what must be true? Number
Right.
four, why is the scene lucky to have me? Like what by
Hmm.
that I mean, what is
Yeah.
it that I know as a human
What
being
am
that
I
I can bring
doing?
to the character? So those are general
Hmm.
questions that we will answer specifically. And even if you answer
Uh-huh.
them specifically, you've not really arrived at a bulletproof interpretation. You've just sort of come away with a great analysis of what the
Yeah.
human condition is. That's the
Hmm.
deal. We also
Yeah.
invite the directors
That
into our
makes perfect
workroom.
sense.
And
Hmm.
all our directors came down and
Yeah.
visited our workroom. So they knew what we were on about. They knew what the
Yeah.
depth we were going. And I think the directors are really happy because they could ask for big things. Like one of my favorite scenes just because it's so difficult and it's not spectacular, except it's really hard. When I think it's episode four, Percy and Annabeth are on the train. They're having a long philosophical conversation, and
Mm.
Grover is up on the top bunk listening.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And and it's very philosophical and it's really difficult. And it reminded me sort of a French, sort of like a French film, sort of the way and they're not looking at each other. Their eyes are kind
Yeah.
of looking off in the middle distance. And
Oh,
and so we just kind of talked about what was going on there and about their friendship. And then when we started
yeah.
to roll, the director would sort of give them feedback as they started to engage in a conversation they understood, you know?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's such a good question because I've always been afraid of blowing it by sort of going,
Hmm.
do this. Like it's the tricky thing is you can't be prescriptive. A coach
Uh-huh.
has to be evocative and provocative and not prescriptive.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, you know
Uh,
what I mean? Yeah.
yeah. That's so great. You have to yeah, a good teacher really trusts their students, And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to find when in like creative spaces because people want to prescribe and they want it to be a very specific way. But that's so special.
I do have like a quick
Yeah,
follow-up
yeah.
question on what you just said. Can you tell
Love
us a
it.
little bit more about what these tone meetings are that you described being in with
Yeah.
the directors?
Oh, listen, tone meetings are fantastic. That's where the heads of all the departments get together and they talk
Cool.
about the episode. They talk about images. They will say it's got this kind of a feel or that kind of a feel. They talk about the minutia of a look or of a prop. There's a lot of business that gets done as well in terms of the mechanics of some of the specific elements of the scene. But it's just
Mm.
these incredibly kind of creative deep dives into like under the surface of what the episode is about, what
Yeah.
people are hoping to
Hmm.
achieve, what the characters' journeys are. And so I listen to those, and it's fantastic.
That's so. I, that's so cool. I want to hear about the minutia of the prop and if the prop is setting the tone properly.
Yeah, and how it's going to be, how it's going to be used, and sort of, and and as a fly on the wall, because I'm, a fly, I get to, I get to be a fly on the wall. I can start to put together the puzzle of what things are,
Yeah.
because Percy has a specific tone,
Mm.
Absolutely.
you know.
Yes. That's something we've been talking
Yeah,
about a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good, cool.
Yeah. The tone of everything. Uh-huh. Going off of that, is part of your sort of like contract as acting coach to be on set all the time? Are you always
Yeah,
on set?
yeah. I'm on set all the time. So, I'm there in the morning. I like to get there before the first actor arrives,
Mm-hmm.
and I usually go home just after the last actor finishes.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Wow.
day is tricky, right? Because
Yeah.
if I, for instance, if I trust that Walker and Aryan, if their scene is going and it's kind of going, it's not whether it's going okay, but it's all set up, it's in the pocket and that sort of stuff. I also know that I have Leah down in the classroom,
Hmm.
and
Uh-huh.
she and I are wanting to look at something that she's shooting tomorrow.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very busy. Um, and I'm there every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't miss a scene. I only missed 4 days on this one because I had COVID and I was really sick, and it
Mm-hmm.
killed me to miss it.
Mm-hmm. So
But
will there be
yeah,
moments where you sort of jump in and you're like, this one isn't like we're not getting like the rhythm here. Let's have a conversation.
are you kidding? Are you kidding? Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, as it's so funny. Jet Wilkinson and I, we have this. She's just become such a good friend of mine. Like, we're
Yeah.
standing at the monitor and we're watching it, and it's almost at the same time we'll kind of look at each other and go, hmm. And they finish the take, and then I just kind of go in. I go in
Yeah.
all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the last one there. I make them blow through the lips. I have them focus, and and then I back away just as they're saying rolling. Sometimes between rolling and action, I'm just backing
Mm-hmm.
away. Um, if there's yeah, no, ding 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 ding. If there's ding, 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 don't mind me. I'll just hide over here behind this stunt man. But yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, one of the things I love about it is I get to be part of the crew. I really like being part of the crew. Like,
Hmm.
when we're all out in the rain, we're all out in the rain. When it's snowing, it's like it's snowing, and like we're all in the mud on the volume and stuff. It's
Yeah.
great because I don't, and our directors are like that too. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the scene with the golden statue, Jet Wilkinson was
Mm.
in a wetsuit in the
Right.
water,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
with the kids, and I was
Yeah.
up on the rim around it. And basically I learned to read my director. So it's almost like if my director's shoulder tenses, I go, okay, I got it. Do you know what I mean? So no, it's really like, it's like, if they have a slight hesitation, if they're like, oh, I don't know, I go, okay. And I will go in and start to adjust things slightly,
Yeah.
because the other thing, and I think I learned this because I was an assistant director in my early 20s. I got to work as an assistant director for some great
Mm-hmm.
directors, and I learned to be of service to their vision.
Mm.
Right.
Hmm.
So the humility, being able to learn how to be of service to their vision, was
Right.
just the best learning ground ever, because you just go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm here to support what they're after. And I sort of sometimes have to slightly read their minds, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so fun. Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
lively.
I was kind of wondering if there are any stories that you have or particular experiences that come to mind when you think about the way that the kids have grown as actors over the course of your time with them, from the beginning of that post production, setting up the classroom, through, I mean, obviously not the end of your journey with them, but like, um,
No, we have at least
Yeah.
12 more years of that.
Yeah. Well, I've got one. You know what? You know what's so interesting? There's a couple of stories, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that one of the biggest helpers for me as the coach is the kids' individual ecosystems. They all have families. And you know, and it's clear that I have this sort of academic component as well. And the kids need to learn their lines and they need to look at their stuff. And I try to hold a space for that. But their families are phenomenal in making sure that when they're shooting and that sort of stuff, that there's such respect for the work that needs to be done. You know, in fact, I've already started to send out little assignments for next year, which I can't tell you, but I do know. I've had response from a couple of the moms going, "Oh, this is great, thank you." Like I'm already giving them homework already.
Pre-work,
It's
summer
like
school.
pre-work, which you can't call it anything because, you know, it's like being on an equity contract. They can't actually
Right.
ask you to do anything before you get
Yeah,
paid.
you can't
So
technically be
I just go,
memorized before you show up. Yeah.
hey guys, I'm just but like I remember this, but so their families were amazing. I remember because I was thinking about you guys and I was trying to think about stuff that maybe people hadn't said before, my noticings of the kids.
Yeah.
I think we'd been working for a week and a half or so, and they announced the casting. And I remember the day they announced the casting because we were in class. You know, this month we had before we started to shoot, there would be stunts and school and me and wardrobe, and that was pretty much it. And I was with them, and one of their phones started to go off. And I watched those three young people all of a sudden confront or experience
Yeah.
what it was going to be to blow up because the amount of response that they got on that one day, like their numbers started to climb from the second the casting was announced. I also watched them come together and support Leah, who got horrible pushback.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of their ability to be a dynamic ensemble with a huge collective heart, that was always there. But it was interesting to just kind of watch it be asked for at such an early stage. In terms of craft and
Yeah.
technique, oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Like, you know, because the more you do it, the more it sort of seems to slow down. That is to say, you're more kind of in the moment as you're doing it. When you first start to shoot a series, things are happening so fast. It's like, ooh, that scene's over, that scene's over, that scene's over, that scene's over. And I watched them started to own more and more what they were going to do. And of course, I could feel when we were at the table that they wanted to drop in deeper just because we had collectively excavated everybody. So there was a deeper place for things to drop in. But I can't tell you when Walker would say something to me like, "Oh yeah, he really is still working for his dad's approval, even though his dad's abandoned him." I would just go, "Okay." Like as they started to drink the Kool-Aid, you know, of the entire of the event, you know, I mean, to say nothing of the craft and the technique, because it's like, you know, so they're on the volume and then Arian's on wires and then they're all on wires and then you've got the CGI monsters and then you're falling off of this and you're falling off of that. And I remember it being a real landmark day. I don't know if you remember when Walker is on the St. Louis Arch and Echidna, the monster is coming after, and
Holding on
he's
to
on
the
the ground.
shrapnel.
He's holding on, and just before that, I just remember knowing I could push him a little bit more, and I said, "You're going to," you know, I just kind of got in his face, and I said, "This is it," and you could just feel them access something, you know, that they
Yeah.
always had. But what's great is that you know, like the directors, everybody involved, we just held a place for them to access that which they had been cast for because the
Yeah.
casting was brilliant. Because they looked at the casting and they went, there's only so much an audition can tell you, but it's like they were testing for depth of heart and depth of willingness, if not
Yeah.
experience, willingness, you know? Um, Oh yeah, and they would, you know, you'd watch them be like old hands, you know, like I think I need to do that again, but not in a princessy way. But you
Yeah.
know, they'd finish a fight or something, and one of them would go, Yeah, no. When at the beginning, all the adults would be like, "Oh, that was so good," and then after a certain point, they go, "Yeah, really?" And we go, "Yeah, it really was." And it's like, "Do we do another one?" And it was like, okay. I mean, they were only ever collaborative, but as the agency grew, so did the agency. If that makes any sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, so did the
God,
ownership. Yeah.
everybody, I mean, obviously the kids are they're brilliant and that's why they were hired. But like, I have to say, like, everybody collectively just did such a great job because when Walker talks about Percy, the way that he understands
Yeah.
it is like,
Oh,
it
yeah.
shakes me to my core when he just like casually mentions something about Annabeth and what Percy sees in it,
Yeah.
and understands and comes
Yeah.
to know about her and respect about her. And I'm like, oh my God, Walker, you're a child. You should not be this smart. Like, please.
I don't think we ever talked any less. I mean, I think that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. It's sort of like
Hmm.
the risk we took. I think everybody, the risk we took was just to go, let's just start where it starts. And if we're all working really hard with respect for what everybody else can analyze and understand, it just sort of everybody came up to everybody else's level. So these kids would come
Yeah.
out with things and you just go, absolutely. Like deep issues of abandonment, codependence.
Yeah.
I remember, I'll never forget Annabeth. We were talking, like, there's a really interesting gap. Annabeth left her dad's house. Her mom and her dad, her stepmom and her dad had a fight. Annabeth
Yeah.
left the house. Luke found her. There's a gap there. So for a while,
Yeah.
Annabeth was a young girl on the street or wherever alone. So I found this picture. And Annabeth and I talked about that. And I said, what was that? And she said, we need
Yeah.
to figure that out. So I found a picture of a little girl wearing sort of just a hoodie it's a very shadowy picture in an alley near a dumpster. And Annabeth said, I would
Mhm.
have lived in that. And I said, yeah. And I said, so when Luke came along, the need for Luke and that, so they,
Mm.
if you give them, and I think, and 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 we only ever talked about that. Like there was never any talk at the camera or anything or at the monitors
Yeah.
about the kids
Mhm.
being kids. Like ever, there was never any translation. It wasn't like, oh, look at us, clever adults, understanding that this is about deep-seated abandonment and people pleasing as a result. Like they
Yeah.
would just kind of know, or we would have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah.
very cool. Everybody was
Yeah.
pushing everybody, continues to push everybody.
Yeah. And that's so great. Like the thing about it feeling like theater rehearsal with the table work, because like you said, everybody gets to know the other characters as well. And that
Don't you love
yeah,
that? Yeah.
that adds so much to them being the ensemble nature of it. And whether or not their character
Yeah.
knows that
Yeah.
yet is also fun because then they can decide like when does my
Yeah.
character come to learn these things.
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
okay, as a
Totally. Totally.
we knowing that you have read the books and also you understand these characters so much. I think that means that we get to ask
Yes.
you our typical closing question for the podcast, which
Oh
is
dear. This is what I don't think I know the book as well as I do. Yeah.
no,
Do
but
ask.
this is all about character and relationship because we've kind of built
Yeah.
our podcast asking the question, is Percabeth the greatest love story ever told? And everybody has different thoughts on that, but I would love to hear like what you think. Basically, just to translate it to this conversation, like what makes the relationship between Percy and Annabeth as they exist in season 1 of the show, going from strangers to coworkers to friends, like what makes that special and unique for these two characters?
I think, and I think Grover is included in this as well. I think they share a very particular frequency. The frequency
Mm.
is one of abandonment. And
Mm.
I think they recognize, oh, this makes me really cry.
Oh
Oh, it
my
makes me
God.
really emotional. They
Yeah.
really recognize the orphan in each other,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
they really respect. I think what Percy really understands Annabeth's need for a mom like he has, and I think her being on the outs with her mom drives him to miss his mom anymore. It's just that
Hmm.
frequency. It's like kids in
Hmm.
the playground that find each other only to discover that, oh, your parents are divorced too, or that sort of stuff, you know?
Wow.
And
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's that frequency. I don't mean they're trauma bonding. They're not trauma bonding. There is the indomitability of the human condition that comes
Yeah.
out of being a survivor.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. And if the whole
Yeah.
thing, if the whole thing is basically about a day at high school or middle school, you take away all of it and you just go, it's kind of just about a day at middle school,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. You know what I mean? In a way, not to be reductive, but you just go,
No, for
who are the
sure.
kids you gravitate towards,
Yeah.
I mean, look at that thing that happened that day. I told you their Instagram blew up. That,
Hmm.
they all experience this, oh my God, we are, and then the stuff started to fly at Annabeth, and as a group they just came at it, and they just, the indomitability of the human condition, and they just kind of went, you know what, we're not going to patronize this or pat you on the back, we're going to understand it, we're going to let you have your anger about it, we're here
Hmm.
to support you. And every one of those uh characters, every one of those actors respected each of the other actors need to be heard at certain times.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's what bonds the characters together. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? But as I said it, I didn't even know that I had actually understood that deeply. That made me quite emotional. It's just that,
Wow.
you go, wow, yeah,
No one
that's
has
my answer.
ever No one has ever said that about that idea of the kids finding each other on the playground because they just happen to vibrate at the same frequency and they find each other because
Totally.
they have to. Yeah, it's like and they become that's how they become a found family so quickly. Is because recognize that need in each other and then they
That was
were
Yeah,
able
I
to.
beautiful.
remember grade
Yeah.
three. I mean, in grade three, Vicky Wilburn, when I was in grade three, Vicky Wilburn threw a snowball at me, and it really hurt me. And my mom said, that's because Vicky likes you. So that's not to say that Percy and Annabeth don't throw snowballs at each other, but it's that frequency,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because they're kids after all, you know what I mean? I know, we're
Oh
all
my God, I'm gonna
remembering
lose
that.
it. I'm gonna lose it. That was Chef's kiss. I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time, actually. And we're going to continue. We're going to
Oh,
cite this
good.
answer in future episodes of this podcast, I'm sure. Fun last question for you, because you're like a
Okay.
genius and a consumer of so much media and a professor and a teacher. If you had to recommend one piece of media, be it like a movie or a TV show or like a filmed stage production or something, where you're like this, like either like this is my favorite thing
Oh.
ever and like you cannot live your life without seeing this, or like this is acting, like what's your iconic piece of media that cannot be missed?
Oh
You
God,
could
listen,
also
I go
list
to
like
New York
five.
twice a year. I go to New York twice a year and watch 6 shows every time.
Mm.
It changes every season. Right now, I can't get enough of Reindeer Games. I mean,
Oh
have
my
you watched
God,
Oh,
Reindeer
yes.
Games yet?
wow.
Netflix?
I
Okay.
it's number one on my
It's
list. I've
some of
heard
the
it's
best
amazing.
nuanced, some of the best nuanced acting. It's incredible. Based on a one-person show that the guy started at the Edinburgh Fringe, then it moved. Then he got an Olivier Award for the play, and now the story of how it's become a miniseries, everything about it, I
Uh-huh.
love. I will be going
Okay, I
to
gotta
see
watch it.
Eddie Redmayne in Cabaret.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I saw Alan Cummings do it twice, because
Hmm.
for some reason, Cabaret, when I was 14, I went downtown by myself. I would go on I think I must have seen it 5 times. Went downtown Ottawa, and watched Cabaret, because there was something about that movie. There was something
Hmm.
about what was going on
Absolutely.
there. I didn't quite understand, but I went, there's something happening here. It was smart. It was intelligence. It was sexy. It was
Yeah.
subversive. It was political.
Hmm.
I saw Jessica Chastain do A Doll's House last season on Broadway,
Yep.
Hmm.
which I still remember. I saw the original Hamilton when it was downtown at the
Oh, at the
Public Theater.
public.
There was like 190. Yeah, I saw it at the Public. Uh, Spring Awakening, I think, is seminal.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I mean,
These are excellent references.
I could go on. Come on, you know,
Oh my goodness. Please let me know what you think of Cabaret.
I will.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
bummed I'm missing it. Like I don't think that there's a single like day I can go back to New York to get
No,
the ticket. Yeah.
I don't think you can
But
say. And then you'd also have to sell your mother to buy a ticket.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And I got a full review from my
so
roommate.
expensive.
I got a full review. So it's basically like I saw it.
Yeah, yeah. I hear this thing. I want to see his interpretation of that part because
Yeah.
that part is so crazy,
Hmm.
you know. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
are you watching The New Look?
The New Look?
Oh, geez. Ben Mendelsohn, Juliette Binoche. It's about Christian Dior and Chanel during the Second World
Oh,
War.
on Apple TV. Got
And
it. I'm on it.
it's on Apple. Oh, it's just incredible. And it's about the German occupation of
Uh-huh.
Paris and what the
John
couturiers had to
Malkovich
do and
is
how
in
they
it.
bonded together. Oh no, come on. No, it's just like it's one of those
Glenn
shows,
Close
and
is
I
in
will
it.
watch Ben Mendelsohn do anything.
Okay.
Oh,
It's so
wow.
good.
Dang. Apple TV, listen, Apple TV is constantly making the most
Bangers.
Yeah,
unbelievably high budget banger
bangers.
A-list casts shows that no one has heard of.
Yeah,
And I'm like, what are you talking about? This has
yeah.
4 seasons on Apple TV and I've never heard about it.
I know. I know. I know.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
know.
I'll get on that.
What else
I'll get on that.
happens? Carter, let me ask you a question just for a second. So how do you come to this? Like, what's your crazy artist? What's your crazy artist provenance?
I feel I don't know. Wow, I don't have a good answer for this. I think
Be
that
honest.
That's okay.
I just watch a lot of television and
Yeah, yeah.
You're also a musician. I think that you should cite that.
Oh, okay. I knew there was something. Okay, so so you're a musician. Okay.
yeah, not professionally. I think I was somebody who spent a lot of time doing creative things earlier in my life. And
Yeah.
now all of those things funnel into this podcast and related works as I spend my day doing, like data cleaning for a new academic
Yeah,
paper.
I'm just always interested, like how we all come together under one umbrella. You know, it's so interesting
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
It's because you went to a Montessori
know?
preschool, Carter. That's why you're so creative. I think about this all the time. That's why you're the smartest person I know. Because the Montessori
They are. My
preschool.
sister went to Montessori. They are. Montessori people are the smartest people.
It's true.
I do
Yeah.
enjoy it. I enjoyed it as an experience. I would send a child to Montessori preschool. Yeah. Anyway, wow. This has
Wow.
been so delightful. We've been looking forward to having this conversation so
Oh,
much,
thanks,
and
guys.
we're
So
so
have I.
grateful that you took the time to talk to us and
Yeah.
give all of these really amazing insights into the show and into acting and into
Oh,
your
good.
career and philosophy and everything. Yeah, this has been very fun.
This is better than I even
Oh,
dreamed it
good.
would be.
You guys are fantastic. Listen, I'm a big fan. I really respect what you do a lot, and the kids love you. You know, so that's fantastic.
They're
Yeah.
little geniuses. I'm obsessed with them. Would you
Yeah.
would you like people to find you on social media? Anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah. I'm at McIlroy and Associates.
Everybody
That's my
follow.
Instagram at McIlroy and Associates. Yeah.
I really want to call you Sir Andrew.
Oh,
I don't know why. It's like really like I had to stop myself when you came on the first time from calling you that. So I'm going to do it now. Everybody follow Sir Andrew on Instagram, please, and get really excited for season 2. Thank you, Andrew.
okay, let's check back in when season 2 starts. Okay.
Yes. Also, Lucy
yeah,
Cabaret.
for sure.
Oh, yes. Okay. Good. Okay. So we're on. Okay. This is
We're
the
on.
thing now. Thank you. I want to come
Thank
away. I
you.
want to come away with friends. I'm happy for that. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.